In this demonstration, I will be making a two-piece waist mold out of plaster. This is a sculpted form out of red terracotta clay that I will be using as a demonstration. It is part of a long series that I have been working on with fire flares. So this is just another very organic form and another part of that series of my sculpture. You can always look at my website to see the work that I've done. But the two-piece waist mold is a good way for you to make a simple and traditional mold. And that mold is only to be used once, and that's why it's called a waist mold, or the mold is only to be casted once. So hopefully you enjoy the demonstration, and please pay attention to the subtleties of how I work with plaster in order to get that ultimate detail. Remember, as sculptors, we want to be able to capture the moment when we decide to stop sculpting and move on into the mold making process in order to freeze that moment of time where we decided to stop the sculpture, and now let's transform that sculpture into another material, so hopefully it will last hundreds or even thousands of years. So hopefully you enjoy this demonstration. Again, my name is Nathan Orozco, and you can look at my website in order to see more of my work. And again, thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this demonstration. I will be using a #1 pottery or casting plaster. It is a plaster that you cannot find at a typical hardware store like Home Depot or Lowe's. You are going to have to purchase this at a ceramic shop or at a mold making or sculpture supply store. So #1 casting plaster.
Okay, here I go. Now I gotta get underneath there. Got that. Now remember, we're not really making puddles, just trying to get a coat. You see how you're moving. This should be your sole focus, so don't get distracted. Remember, once that plaster hits that clay, there's no turning back on your sculpture. Have to go with it. Keep agitating your plaster. Here, one last spot. And it's beautiful at this point because you can really see how the plaster is curing by just the texture of the coat. Okay, good. That's your completed detail coat, right? Okay, now, in the meantime, remember you got your clean hand. You're going to get your scraper and go ahead and begin your kind of area right now. It'll buy you some time before you get going. Now remember, in order for these to be proper waist molds, you have an inch thick perimeter that I want you to scrape, right? So you know that your mold in every place must be an inch thick. Not just high, but also cross-section inch thick. So we're going to really focus on the fence line when we do this. All your plaster will drop down because of gravity, but you're going to really apply high to make sure that your fence line is not only thick that way, but also that way. And it's not quite there yet. It will be there in a few seconds, okay? Go ahead and add. You can do a little dribbling if you want, but if you keep doing that too much, it's all going to fall. Almost there. Not quite. Remember that sticky state. And once it happens, you're going to apply, the process is putting your plaster on first. Like putting an amount on there and then shaping when the plaster's on there. So you really just want to get your material on and then move your material around. Okay? And you see that breakage? It's still not breaking just enough. But it's getting to that point where those calcium particles are starting to expand. Almost there. If I can do this and it's just flopping, right? Not quite yet. The reason why I want you to really pay attention to it, because once it gets to that sticky state, you only have about maybe 20, 30, 40 seconds, at most a minute to do everything you need to do. Okay, now I'm kind of ready to go. I'm going to already start to apply. Now look, fence line first. See, I'm starting high. It's all going to drip down anyways. So fence line first. Try not to overlap, okay? And that's why it's really, really important to have your support board proper, because that's a lot of weight. If that were to collapse at this state, that's very, very problematic, right? Having your fence line collapse. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that I'm flopping it into that negative space here. You don't want any air pockets. So if you have an awkward form, do a little shaking. So see, I'm starting at the bottom, getting it out. I'm kind of shaking my hand. Hopefully get that air pocket out of that interior. Still, now we're talking. See, when I apply, now that's staying. See, you see how I'm just applying. I'm not really shaping, I'm just grabbing an amount of my hand. Oops. Okay, and going up. Now you never want to go down. Control that plaster up. Upwards. Don't go down, because it's going to fall. Remember, you have these little particles just holding up like a staircase, right? If you go down, it's just going to go like that and just all drop. Make sure you clean up that fence line. You see how I have it thickness that direction as well as up. Okay. Now I can start to shape. Top wide too. See the top? I'm cross sectioning. Is basically a kind of a paddle. You're not doing any fingertip work at all. Shaking that, making sure I get that air pocket out from that little area. You see how I'm already cleaning. I'm already using my hand to create a perimeter line at the bottom. Again, clean hand. You're not. I'm adding to the top. See, you want that. Making sure I get enough thickness at that top. Perfect. Okay, now that's just perfect, right? What I want. Okay, now, at this point, you're going to scrape your hands off, right? Nice and sticky. I can do a lot more work. And now you're sculpting it. Okay? Now you're kind of making it nice to hold on to, because we're going to be picking these up out of a kiln. So always sit here and shape as you're going along. Okay? I'm going to go ahead, rinse off my hands so I can get a little more control. And with a clean hand, right, start to soften. With all that plaster on your hand, it carries the plaster, so it doesn't really do what I'm doing now. You can also add a little bit where you need to. And you see how I'm making it nice to hold on to, making sure I have an inch thick tie for my fence line and cross section as well. Get your plaster, your scraper at this point. Don't stop, because now's the time when that plaster is set. Make sure you get your perimeter line set. And that is set. Now look at this overlap right here. This is why you want to move swiftly, because it's best that I take this off now. Clean that up now, so that's not an issue later on. It's no big deal if it overlaps a little bit, because you have your clay in there to create that separation. But I'm just making sure that I'm also going to scrape that top layer so I know where my fence line is at. Remember, as long as you get your nice silk glove, right? Make it nice. Making a mess today, huh?
after the mold is complete, then you are going to want to get some wooden hardwood wedges and only choose about 3 places on the mold fence line. After you've probably sanded or rasped or found the line, you'll be able to see it with a small dark line, and just kind of simply pry it open. Don't worry about the form breaking or the clay sculpture breaking, because that's the whole point of a waste mold, is that you're going to lose the shape, but you're only going to need one casting. And here it is opened up fully and cleaned. All the clay has been cleaned out, and any repairs that I've wanted to do, I've done. For instance, if there's any air pockets or things break off, you can add just more plaster to it and resculpt it from the negative, which is kind of fun to do, working backwards from a sculpture that you spent time working in the positive. But make sure you break it open and clean all the clay out, and yeah, repair anything you want. Again, remember, do not destroy the fence line too much as you are breaking it open. Only choose 3 places, 4 at the most, and just slowly work those wedges to slow, and your hard palette knife or your scraper to wedge it open slowly. And here it is from underneath after the mold is put back together. You can see how the seam lines or the fence lines create a nice, good puzzle that's only going to fit one way, and it's ready to be stored. And what's great about a plaster mold is that you can store it for as long as you want. Obviously, you're going to want to store it indoors because it is porous. So if it's out in the elements and the rain, it will soak in and deteriorate after a while. So here is the mold put together. Maybe just a rubber band or a wire that you can wrap around it and put it on the shelf whenever you mix up some concrete or anything. A plaster two-piece mold can be used to also cast metal, such as aluminum, and you would have to heat this mold up into a kiln to at least 400 degrees overnight, and make sure that you cast it at that temperature, or make sure that it is hot, so that aluminum, which is about 1800 degrees, can cast properly. It's a rough cast, but definitely a lot of options with a two-piece mold. I really hope that you enjoyed this demonstration, and I do hope that you are at peace and enjoying the projects that you are having at home or in the studio or outside. So continue sculpting, and thank you very much for your time.